The agenda this week examined what's behind the September surge in COVID-19 cases and the prospects for getting a vaccine here in Canada. The agenda's Week in Review begins south of the border and why post-election chaos might really matter north of the border.
I am going to say openly, I think the likelihood of a civil war in the United States is very low.
Janice Stein is from Missouri on this. In other words, show me. Okay, Stephen Marsh, show her.
Well, I mean, I think it depends what you mean by civil war, right? I mean, when I wrote the article for The Walrus that this book is based on in 2018, even coming up with the argument that America was in civil strife was hard to make. But I think we're obviously there now. There are roving battles on the streets of major American cities. I think the civil war that we're talking about is not really armed encampments, but really the breakdown of society, things like what we've seen in the Middle East in places like Syria and Libya and so on. And that seems to me much more likely. I mean, the book that I'm working on deals with sort of deep models. When you see things like what's happened in the Supreme Court right now, where essentially the legal system of the United States is now a partisan spoil for party politics, that is classic prelude to civil war. When you see things like, the best available models show us that there's going to be about 13 million climate change refugees within the next 20 years in America. That's not a million years away. That's in our lifetimes. When you see the rise of the far right in the United States, which is totally underrated. Like the violence that we're seeing in Oregon, the violence that we're seeing on the streets, which is basically left-wing violence, is really going to be nothing compared to when the armed militias really start to make themselves felt, which they haven't yet. So, I don't want to be alarmist, but on the other hand, I think that when you talk to the experts at PRIO, when you talk to the hyperpartisanship experts, effective partisanship, what you're seeing here is a very classic spiral where the system of government no longer is legitimate to people. The legal system is no longer legitimate to people, and violence and chaos are the inevitable result. And I think, not to put too fine a point on it, but this isn't a prediction anymore. This is in progress. This is not an incipient thing. This is happening right now.
Wesley Wark, you get to break the tie.
I think I'm leaning more actually in Janice's camp on this. I mean, everybody is right to be worried about what the next steps in American politics might hold, both for the United States and for the world. But I think everything depends on an issue that we need to focus on, which is the question of the conduct of the American presidential election, and the question of whether or not the outcome will be seen as legitimate, both within the United States and in the international system. And I think we all have to hope that a path to legitimacy will be found, and the election will be accepted no matter who wins. But if we descend into a period where there's widespread disbelief in the outcome of the election, that could be, but I say just could be, that could be the trigger for some outbreaks of violence and certainly for longer-term instability. But I think the key question is, what is the election going to look like, and is it going to be perceived as legitimate?
Well, you asked what the election's going to look like. I want to know more, and Stephen, I'll come back to you on this. I want to know more about what a civil war is going to look like, because, 150 years ago, it was a Northern Army versus a Southern Army, and 500,000 people were dead. 4 years later, 5 years later. It's hard to imagine that's what it would look like today. There is no Southern Army. So tell us what it looks like in your view.
It looks like armed insurgents. It looks like pockets of militias, which already exist, the 3%ers, sovereign citizens alone, like the people, the minimum number of sovereign citizens in the United States are 600,000 people. So that dwarfs anything in the 60s, right? Like I think that the far right in the United States is a huge part of the population, and they're extremely armed, and they are extremely filled with righteousness. And what we'll see is, exactly what you see in Syria, where, well, not exactly, of course, but like when I imagine it, it's not armed encampments. It's just the breakdown into tiny pockets of little loyalties, which were already there, right?
Well, let me go to
Like
Janice Stein
that's
on
already
that.
happening.
Okay, let me go to
The question
Janice.
is when the larger structures, but like the question is about this election is, well, if it fails, but the larger trend is that all the institutions in the United States are becoming illegitimate to the people. Like it doesn't matter what happens with the Supreme Court in horse race politics for now. Half of the country, one way or the other, is going to feel that the Supreme Court is just a bunch of partisan hacks. Once that happens, you lose stability. Like stability is gone.
Where are these new cases, to the best of your knowledge, coming from?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So locally, which I think we are very similar to other jurisdictions, what you'll see is that it's young adults. So they have currently in our area twice the rate, those between 20 and 39, of any other age group. And actually within that, we also see that it's about predominantly being driven by males. So we're a university town in Guelph, and I'm sure that other university towns are also seeing this, but young adults are predominantly the newest cases that we're seeing.
Dr. Lowe, what would you add to that?
I would agree. It is young adults, and certainly in our region, we're also seeing 60% of our cases, people aged between 20 and 49. In general, what we find in our region is that these are not only the social gatherings, which certainly have been made highlighted in a lot of the recent communications, but it's a bit of a cycle between what we're seeing in workplace outbreaks, and then these individuals then bring it home with them, and then out and about when they're socializing, and then back into the workplace. So it's this general cycle that we keep seeing between these three settings, where we're really focusing all of our efforts at the surge at this time.
Dr. Furness, take us back to an earlier time when we were doing better and we were seeing for a time, about 100 cases a day. What were we doing so well back then that apparently we're not doing as well today to keep the numbers low back then?
The number one thing I land on is actually weather. We can get away with a lot when the weather is hot and it's humid. Those are very protective. That's starting to disappear. So that's number one. But I think number two is toward the end of the summer, a lot of folks throwing up their hands and feeling frustrated and feeling lonely and looking at the low case numbers and saying, I'm going to hug my friends. I'm going to have the party. I'm going to do that because it's been too long. And that's understandable, although, of course, it comes with the consequence that we're seeing.
So fair to say it was inevitable as the weather got colder that even if we just kept doing the same stuff, it was going to get worse.
Of course, the weather hasn't really gotten colder yet, just a little bit. But every drop in temperature, we could expect, according to some models, a 3% increase in cases. So as the temperature continues to drop, my concern is obviously we're going to see more and more.
Dr. Lowe, do you know, is this the so-called second wave everybody has been anticipating?
I think it's really challenging, and I can only really speak to the numbers we're seeing in Peel. But it also is important to know where the cases are. And in Peel, fortunately, at the end of our investigations and our contact tracing, we're figuring out about 80 to 85% of these cases, they have a known exposure. So it's a little different than a second wave where we would see widespread propagated community transmission. At this time, most of the new cases, even though the numbers are high in Peel, are people that are connected to known exposures in workplaces, social gatherings, and in homes as well.
Well, let me put this in a bit of an odd way for you, Dr. Mercer. Are you glad you're not the medical officer of health in Peel or Toronto right now, where the biggest outbreaks seem to be?
Well, I would agree, although Dufferin County is right beside the region of Peel. So we are seeing, and in fact, this past weekend, that's where most of our cases were being driven. And of course, because we are colleagues, we are also supporting region of Peel with their cases.
Very glad to hear that. Dr. Furness, what about you on this issue of whether we're seeing a second wave yet right now?
We only ever know in hindsight when we look back and see when the wave began. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think Dr. Lowe nailed it. We know what the pattern is there. It doesn't look like it's accelerating in the community to the extent that I might use the word second wave. Remember, in June and into July, we had 400 cases a day or so, and it stayed pretty stable. It was frustrating at that level, but it showed us that that can happen, and that may be what's happening now. My concern is when the temperature really drops. So I think we're not seeing the spike that, to me, that says second wave yet.
Nicola Mercer, let's go over what we now know compared to what we knew in the spring when this thing first hit. What do you know about how the virus works today versus 6 months ago?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think what we didn't realize early on, we thought of it more of as a respiratory virus only. And what we are learning is that this is really actually a multi-organ virus, which is why when we see people in a hospital, we're seeing a little bit of a different trend. We also know that when people recover from this virus, different from perhaps other coronaviruses that we've seen, is that some of them actually have a very long period of recovery with prolonged symptoms afterwards. So this was something that we actually didn't know about this virus. And I would say the other thing that we're learning is that this is really about human-human interaction and less about fomites, or what by that we mean what we touch. So it's less about the things that were around and more around the people that were around.
So all of that time we spent washing off our mail and being careful not to touch countertops and that was probably exaggerated. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, those are important things to do for a lot of reasons about keeping your hands clean. But what really is important, it's those human-to-human interactions and less about the paper that we touch and the things that we touch. So those are still important, and I'm not saying that you can't get COVID from those things, but really people are getting COVID from each other.
Let me just start by reading an excerpt from Foreign Affairs magazine that'll get us off to the races here with our discussion. Sheldon, if you would, the graphic. That sort of vaccine nationalism, or a my country first approach to allocation, will have profound and far-reaching consequences. Without global coordination, countries may bid against one another, driving up the price of vaccines and related materials. Desperate governments may also strike short-term deals for vaccines, with adverse consequences for their long-term economic, diplomatic, and strategic interests. The result will be not only needless economic and humanitarian hardship, but also intense resentment against vaccine-hoarding countries, which will imperil the kind of international cooperation that will be necessary to tackle future outbreaks, not to mention other pressing challenges such as climate change and nuclear proliferation. Okay, let's get into this. Is geopolitical cooperation as important, Dr. Bernstein, in your view, as acquiring the vaccine itself?
The short answer is yes, Steve. I think it's absolutely critical that we work together, we being the nations of the world, the community of nations, because this virus knows no borders. So if we're going to defeat the pandemic and the virus, we all need to be working together.
Jason, what say you on that?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's been said many times before that the pandemic doesn't end here until it ends everywhere. And certainly speaking from the perspective of an international medical humanitarian organization that responds to conflicts around the world and provides medical assistance to people who are affected by conflict, natural disasters, disease epidemics, and other emergencies, we're absolutely concerned about how the people that we provide care for are going to be able to access this vaccine, and it's essential that they do.
Alex, what are you finding in your reporting on this?
I think it's worth acknowledging that the argument for working together and for global collaboration is absolutely something that resonates with readers. I've heard this quite a bit from people I've spoken to, that they're very proud of the role that Canada plays on the global stage. But at the same time, I think it's worth acknowledging that Canada is kind of in a tricky position here. We've heard from officials as well that they really value working together. We feel a sense of obligation to the global community. But while there's been kind of some movements toward global collaboration, the COVAX facility, obviously being the big example, some big players are not participating. The U.S. obviously made headlines, with that decision. And so we're seeing a lot of countries, making it very clear that they're putting money into this, but the fruits of that are for their citizens alone. And so in that context, I think Canada really is trying to sit on the fence a little bit. They're saying we value this global collaboration, but at the same time, they're really, hedging their bets and making sure we lock down some agreements of our own.
Well, okay, let me follow up with Alan on that. I mean, I think it's fair to say the United States has been out there much more aggressively and I think earlier than Canada, in signing bilateral deals with various pharma companies to get something going here. How does that affect Canada's efforts to get a vaccine for our citizens in this country?
Oh, I think we've done quite well, actually. In fact, the latest announcement was just yesterday when Minister Anand announced that Canada had purchased vaccines from Sanofi Pasteur GSK, a partnership between those two companies. And prior to that, she had announced 4 different vaccines, all of which we had been recommended by us at the Vaccine Task Force. So I think we have secured what we were trying to do at the task force, which is vaccine candidates that represent the different platform. Because at the end of the day, we don't know which vaccine is going to work. And we don't know which platform is going to work and also be safe. So we now have secured a lot of doses from the 3 different platforms that everybody wants. So I think we're doing quite well.
Alex, I wonder if you could tell us about something called the COVAX, COVAX initiative. What is that?
Definitely. So COVAX is really kind of the big global effort to try to get countries to come to the same table and work together in terms of vaccine, both procurement and distribution. And so we know as of Monday that Canada is in. So we're going to be part of this this move to kind of pool money, invest in a slate of vaccine candidates, and then in the hopes that one or several actually work out, those eventual doses will be shared among the member countries. So it is a move towards the global community working together. But critically, there's a second piece of this. It's called the COVAX AMC, or Advanced Market Commitment, and it's the fundraising arm that would raise money to make sure that countries that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford it, like Canada, are also able to participate in this. So I think it's going to be really critical to watch not only the fact that Canada is participating in this, but whether or not we're going to step up and fund that move to make sure that countries that can afford it also have a seat at the table. My understanding is that conversation is ongoing. We could expect news relatively shortly, but that's something definitely for Canadians to watch.
And that's just some of what we covered this week on the agenda. For more, including those conversations in full, you can always visit our website. That's tvo.org, our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, or our Twitter feed. That's twitter.com/theagenda.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.